Well, good afternoon. So my name, as you've heard, is Tim GEYER, and I'm the current chair of World Urban Parks. And I've been in this parks industry for a long time. And I started when I was a 16-year-old boy straight out of school in Australia. And for nearly 50 years, I've been in local government and parks and recreation. So I'm going to spend a bit of time today reflecting on the past, what I've seen, what I've experienced, but with our eye on the future. Where are we going? So this conference theme is about next parks, the next cities and so forth. And sometimes it pays just to look back a little bit and see what we've done in the past. When I started at 16 years old, we had to go out and maintain the parks. And I'm sure a lot of people started out that way, out pushing lawnmowers. So when I had to go and clean up a car park or a park, we were given a blade shear, which is what they used to shear sheep with in the 1800s, a chipping hoe, and a broom. We didn't have the modern machinery we have today. That's what we had. We went out, we did our job. Fortunately, modern technology came up. The Japanese developed the whippersnipper, the cord whippersnippers, and made our life a lot easier. And today we have modern, electric, quiet, environmentally friendly equipment. So this is good advancement in our technology. But it's not always good advancement in our technology. When I was a boy, if I went out to play, we went and played in the creek. We built cubby houses in trees. We played in nature. I grew up in the country, so that was a little easy. My wife grew up in the city, but even she would go down to the creek behind the park and pick blackberries in the wild. That was just the way we did it when we were kids. And then along comes my generation of parks managers, and we made the parks safe. We removed all the dangers. We removed the risk out of play. And we made it a little less adventurous, a little less exciting for the kids. And so, yes, we had safer kids, but we had sterile, off-the-shelf playgrounds that you still see around. And I don't want to belittle the playground companies. They're trying to reintroduce risk back into it, but it'd be good to get nature back into it. So this is what we see today. This is the modern technology. We're now seeing kids who they may be in the nature, but they're on their devices. Parents on their devices, supposedly taking their children to the park, but are they really? They're just sitting on their device. I'd rather be this family at the bottom that uses my device to capture that fun family moment in the park. That's where we should be going with the technology. We have an artist in Australia, unfortunately recently passed away, Michael Leunig, and he did this back in the 70s, this image of Mr. Curly there showing his child the sunrise. And all he needed to do was walk outside, and there it was for free. But that's the direction we have headed as a society. So, I'm not going to read all that because I can't see it all from where I'm standing. But the bottom line is we've changed as a society. We've changed how we do things in parks, and we've evolved as a society. And I think somehow to our own detriment. We are seeing less and less play in nature, and less greening. We need to, as professionals, bring that greening back into our cities, bring the nature back into our cities. And I'm not going to tell you all the ways to do that, because you're going to hear speakers over the next few days that have fantastic examples of how you can achieve these results. But even though the communities are screaming out for better environmental policies, better parks, help reduce the disease in our cities by improving our parks. Remember, urban parks started in the 1800s as a way of getting healthy. Get out of the city, go to the park, get healthy. And we've lost sight of that. As today, unfortunately, we're seeing global leaders in countries, I won't name the one I'm thinking of, but you'll all know, we're moving away from environmental policies. They're disregarding the science. They're saying it's wrong. And as a result of that, it appears that our policies are being pulled back and the greed for a dollar is taking over. This is the words from a young artist. She's a Australian singer who's just moved to the US. And basically that sums it up. You know, the billionaires of the world are taking everything we have and we know and we love for profit. And when it's all gone, there'll be nothing left for any of us. And I don't want to be doom and gloom about this, but this is reality. So it's our role as parks professionals, as leaders in the parks industry, to turn this around, to think about the people who rely on our parks for their health and their well-being and their enjoyment in life. So the theme of this symposium is next. The next generation of cities and parks, greener cities. This is what we're striving for. Healthier communities. Healthy cities means healthy communities. Healthy parks, healthy communities. Equitable access. We want to be able to say everybody should be able to get the value out of the park, even if that is not going to the park, even if it's just looking out your window and seeing some greenery in the park in the distance. That's sometimes all you need, particularly with people moving into high-rise buildings. And community health and wellbeing, I always put that in my slides as the most critical thing that we need to keep central to our ethos. We need to ensure the communities are healthy and the well-being of the community is healthy. Okay, so again, I won't read it all. You can read it. The health and well-being of our cities, time spent in green space is good for our health. The science is there, it's proven, and the demand is there. The community is demanding that we provide green space. I always say that parks and green urban space is critical infrastructure. Now, fundamentally, well-being, we all have a view of what is well-being, but fundamentally it's about the well-being of people fulfilling their lives with purpose and the balance of how we live our lives and achieving what we strive for and in the places where we live. So we got themes next that these various speakers are going to talk to you in themes, and I'm just going to snapshot a little bit as we go along. So in an urban environment where we have a greater demand on our green space, we need to plan a little bit better. We need to think outside the box when it comes to our green cities. And this is just a simple example. Unfortunately, in Australia, where I come from, we love our cars. That's not going to end. I could walk out the door here in Istanbul. You love your cars. I can see that. And wherever you have cars, wherever you have people coming together like that, you need to park them. And would you rather have that hot car park adding to your heat island effect of your cities? Would you have a green car park? Or you can even now go one step further, and this is the green car park, trees, but that solar carport there actually recharges the electric cars during the day. So while you're at work or you're at a shop, you can be plugged into that and charging your car with solar energy free. These are the little things that we need to start integrating into our cities, not leaving big open heat island problems for our cities. We need to look at how we increase the canopy. Now again in Australia, we're an English colonised country, and so a lot of our heritage trees are English trees, European trees. And with the climate changing, that's becoming less and less viable. So what I was doing with my council, we were running tree trials, and I encourage everybody here, and encourage this entire industry here to run tree trials. And if you want a tree like, say, an English oak that has a broad canopy and a nice cool environment underneath it, instead of taking one out of England or Europe, in Australia, I would then turn to Mexico, across here in Turkey, the Mediterranean, look for the same landscape effect, but a tree that is ready for the climate that's coming ahead. And certainly in Australia, I grow oak trees as a hobby. Algerian oaks, Turkish oaks, etc. They are doing much better on my property than any of the English or the European trees now. So start thinking outside the box and try to challenge what we would consider our norms in our landscaping. I think actually Turkey is in a good position with this industry here to push up into Europe because you have the experience of a hot climate. They're just gaining that experience now. So maybe you could help Europeans learn from what they're going to have in the future. Inherently, we grew up in the nature. We didn't grow up in cities. We grew up it's only been the last couple of 100 years that we've really come into the cities. I think the date was around 2009 was 50-50. About the world's population, 50% lived in urban environments and cities, 50% was still out in the rural. By 2050, 75% of our world's population will live in cities and urban environments. So with that comes those major challenges. And of course our population is growing, our population is also ageing. Now, cities are great, you know. I don't know that many people want to live in the wilderness there, and that's in Alaska, or you want to live in Sydney, which is a great, vibrant city. But with a city like Sydney, there comes noise, there comes pollution, there comes all the challenges that we have to live with, and that has a negative impact on our health and well-being. So we need to try and combat that through our parks. There we go. I mean, there's a good example. Where would you rather live? Would you rather live on that street, which is covered in trees and has a green environment, or a street with not a tree in sight? Anecdotally, we know trees actually improve our property value. There's statements out there that say that trees will actually increase business by being in a green environment. But now we're seeing obvious things like the reduction in air conditioning. You have lots of green around your building, you don't need as much air conditioning and cooling in the hot summers. 10% tree canopy can decrease a city's temperature by 1%. So if you increase more canopy, you can continue to reduce that temperature. Street trees, I've already said that, we cover business, and green communities are more affluent communities. That's common right across the world. This is two examples. I often use these slides. This is two suburbs in Sydney. So they're identical in size. The footprint, so on the top slide there's about 60 or 80 houses there, and there's over 150 trees when I stopped counting. The other suburb, which is a new suburb, and what we're building in Australia today, is about 120 houses, so double the number of houses, and I could only count 10 trees. Now, anyone will say, well, Tim, that's a new suburb. It hasn't had a chance to grow trees. But I'd ask you, where would you plant them? Where are you going to... You can't put them in the backyards. You can't put them in between the houses. There is nowhere to plant trees in that suburb. But that's what we're building across Australia today. And not just Australia, right across the world, I'm seeing suburbs just like that. We really need to stop and think about where our priorities are. Yes, affordable housing is critically important around the world, but so is health and well-being. Okay. Is that mine? Yeah. So we also have to think about in the theme of this conference is equitable access to parks. We want to bring green in, but we also be able to give the community access to these parks. So that might just be, it's got to be reasonable distance for people to access by walking instead of having to drive to the park. Or as I say, if you're in an apartment building, you'll be able to look out and see greenery. That helps you with your mental health. Being able to get to a park for just relaxing, whether it be young people, somewhere to play, or older people. We're an ageing society. Right across the world, we're an ageing society. our advances in medicine is keeping us living longer. I think there we go, it's down the bottom there, by 2050 there will be over 2 billion people in this world over the age of 65. Now, if you're over the age of 40 now, you're part of that 2 billion people I'm talking about. And you have to think about what you're building today may well be for you in the future. And easy access, as you get older, your knees give up, your hips give up, your eyes start to give up, and access becomes a bit more challenging. So we have to design when we're doing that, and particularly for young designers. Think about your mother, your father, your grandparents, not just yourself. Think about, can all people go there? There's an organisation, many people would know Gil Penalosa from Canada. He has an organisation called 880 Cities. If we can have an 8-year-old and an 80-year-old access the same space, then we're doing well in our design. And I'd actually go a step further, younger than 8 and older than 80. So as I said, with advances in medicine means we live longer. There's going to be a lot more people over the age of 85 in coming years. But of course, we're also living more sedentary lives. We've got access to fast foods, we've got access to modern equipment so we don't have to work as hard. Transport's getting easier so we don't have to walk as much. And we could end up like our old good mate Norm down here. That was an Australian campaign. If we sit around drinking soft drink all day, or in Australia drinking beer all day, we'll end up looking like Norm. So get out, get in the parks, get into nature. That's what the message we need to be putting out to everybody. And parks are critically important places for people to come meet. Kids go there now to meet their friends, but it should be a place where we can go and meet our friends. When we're designing parks, this is what we can do as professionals. When we're designing parks, keep all these things in mind. Do we have a architecturally designed concrete seat that I wouldn't sit on? It'd be too cold. As you get older, you'll find it hard to get up. For a very simple insert of a timber seat with hands, armrests and a backrest, then suddenly that becomes usable for an older person. I mentioned earlier about eyesight. There is 2 things that older people fear the most in going into parks. One is unruly behaviour, which we can deal with, we can manage, but it's a little bit out of our control. What is in our control is trips and falls. A trip fall to an older person could change their life forever. I use the example of my own grandmother. She rolled out of bed one day and broke her hip at 86 years old. Went into hospital, she never came out. She died in hospital from a broken hip. Now, nobody dies from a broken hip. It was the will to live that she lost because she knew she would have to go into care. That was a life-changing event for her. If somebody walked down a path with, it looks great architecturally, but it's a trip hazard, that could change their life. Whereas a simple, smooth, wheelchair-friendly, easy-to-walk path can still look architecturally good. The other image up the top here is people are going to parks because they're craving green spaces to sit and recharge their batteries, basically. That photo was taken up in Wrocław in Poland. It's a university, and clearly by the desire lines, they all go to the 2 trees in the middle of the park. And the desire to use those trees for shade is probably going to kill those trees. Simple bit of decking or a bit of seating around it would fix that problem. They could continue using that park as a meeting place at the university and not kill the 2 trees that they're craving to sit under in the shade. These are all things we can do. We can bring nature back into our suburbs. Instead of having hard landscapes along the water frontage, let's keep a buffer and keep the green so that nature can be there. So when the kids go into the park, they're part of nature. This also helps, and I'm sure other people will talk about it with the sponge cities and so forth like that. You'll see how these green spaces also help filter the pollutants from the water and act as great ways of helping manage our water, our stormwater in our cities. But they're fantastic, bring nature in, whether it be, I think, Utrecht, they're replanting playgrounds with wildflowers. In Australia at the council where I worked, we were bringing the nature, the bush, right down into the suburbs. And we did, yes, you've got to manage it, but it meant there was wildlife in the suburbs. It's not uncommon to see kangaroos hopping through the residential areas in Australia. And the kids could go out and play and be part of nature. Experience, this is probably not an area of my expertise, but again, getting back to how we experience parks, do we want the experience to be we want it to be a positive experience, and we want that technology to be a positive technology. You know, we see the kids on their devices. We're seeing indoor venues where people go in into virtual reality. I think one of the best things that ever happened a few years ago was when Pokemon Go was out and everyone was chasing these things around parks with their iPhones and whatever like that. They didn't know it, but they were actually out in parks playing and having a great time. So maybe we need to think about how we can use the technologies to get people into parks and enjoying parks and being active in the parks, rather than shutting themselves away and using artificial nature. We need to design green places for people to exercise. I could not imagine, I'm not the most physically active individual, but I couldn't imagine jogging on a busy road, breathing in the pollution when you're trying to get healthy. And you're breathing in all the pollution from the cars you're running past, when you could be off the park, off the street, in the parks, and under the shade of trees. It's got to be far more healthy for us than being out there. Or you might just need a small place in a quiet little green area where people can sit, recharge themselves mentally, and get out and enjoy nature. Recharge your batteries completely free of charge, green energy free of charge, that is. Again, time spent in the green spaces. It's important for people to go there, meet in green spaces, catch up with their friends, and it might be just to sit, just enjoy. But we need to provide the space, the places that they can enjoy that space. The World Health Organization actually acknowledges that participation and access to open space are two of the fundamental elements that you must have in an age-friendly city. And I would say also for a healthy city for all of us. Manuel, this is the slide that I said I borrowed from your city in Basel. This is actually a program that was being done by the combination of a partnership between the City of Basel, and Manuel's here, so he'd be able to answer more about this than I can. The Hoopla Foundation and the university, and it was an intergenerational play. This is where we bring kids and their grandparents to a park or to a location and put them through exercises. And it was as much about getting those kids active as it was keeping those grandparents active. And some of the activities they had to do, and they had professional recreation programmers there to help them. And from what I'm told, and I'll ask Manuel if I'm wrong, this was an extremely successful program, and it's something that we could replicate all around the world. Okay, so as I said, we're going to hear people talking later on about sponge cities and careful design of foreshores and stormwater. I'm not going to go on too much about that. But what I will add is there's also a lot of work being done in the world about parks, green belts, green spaces used as biofilters for filtering the air. So the World Health Organization in Bonn in Germany is putting a lot of work at the moment using university research to identify how you would design your city. And they have a program called Green UR. I think next slide, maybe it comes on further, but they have a program called Green UR And what that does is it takes the data, the GIS data about your tree canopy, where your greenery is, but it also overlays the urban design. Where are your schools? Where are your houses? Where is your industry? And then it throws in a third layer, which is known health data. So what is the city's level of diabetes? What is the city's level of heart disease? What is the city's, the various non-communicable diseases that we suffer today? And by redesigning the city, perhaps putting that green buffer between the school and the industrial estate, or in that wind zone, and help use the greenery to filter out the trees, filter out the air pollutants, then in actual fact we can reduce the mortality rate of that city. And that's a pretty powerful message to give to government, to say, we're not just building a park, we're actually reducing your health bill. We're actually keeping people alive longer. And that's something really worth exploring. So I encourage you to look at what the World Health Organisation's office in Bonn is doing. These are other things you can do. I encourage every city to do a heat island mapping. You'd be amazed. I was blown away. That map's actually of the city where I worked, and areas that I thought were pretty green turned out to be very hot. It didn't take us a long time to work out what we could do to change that and reduce the amount of red in that thing. So they're things that we can all do. The satellite mapping's out there. It's not expensive, it's easy to do, and I encourage every city to do that. You can also educate your community. So this is a simple sign that was in Canada, which tells people these trees we've just taken and planted in what was your parking bays, well, they're removing this many tonnes of carbon from the atmosphere every year. Oh, wait a sec. And on a smaller scale, we can even have a little pocket forest. So these are microforests, they're popping up across Australia. On a weekend, the community comes together, they help design it, they work with professional landscape architects, they come up with this small park. I think that one's about 100 square metres, and then on the following weekend, they plant it and they maintain it. This one's turned out to be so successful that we're now seeing 3 or 4 others pop up in the same city. And it's not driven by the council, it's driven by the community. So it's something we can start and encourage, and the community will take over. So there's a bit of science there. I'm always I always put a disclaimer with the science. I'm a firm believer of science. But when you see statements of additional canopy of trees will help reduce diabetes, you need to understand there's a lot of other factors included in that. But there is real science out there that says time spent in green space is good for our mental health. And the World Health Organization did a big major metadata analysis of 11,000 scientific papers from universities around the world and concluded undisputably that time spent in green space is good for our health. What we're trying to do now is quantify. At the moment we're saying 30 minutes a day is a good thing. But the science is still working on what level of improvement can you get from time spent in green space. And what is it? Is it mental health? I certainly, when I have a stressful time, I'll go and sit in a green park, just recharge my batteries, take some time out, and it is good for your health. And that's the program, the metadata, the Green UR program. We run a trial through World Urban Parks in Mexico. We were very fortunate. One good thing came out of COVID. The World Health Organization wanted to test their data, or test their tool, and they weren't allowed to leave the city. So we partnered with a number of cities across Mexico, and we have a good presence in Mexico, and we were able to do the groundwork for them, and then they were able to quantify that. And we got good results, and as a result of what we did in Mexico, the World Health Organization was able to retune and readjust their algorithms to get better and better data. They've been talking about releasing this program free to the world at some point. It just hasn't been released yet, but when it does come out, it'll be something that every city could take up and use for free. So these are little projects just to finish up my talk. I don't know if I'm early or late, how I'm going for time, but these are little things that we can do in our own cities. Some are expensive, some are not so expensive. But they're things that you can go away and you can do, whether it be to design or whether it be to build, but consider it whenever you're... Oh. So this is a street in the city where I worked. That street was about 12 metres wide. It had a car park and then it just dropped down to the river. Nobody used that park. It was an overflow to that giant shopping centre which had turned its back on the community or turned its back on park and become an insular thing, which we see most shopping centres around the world are insular. They missed an opportunity to building balconies and enjoying that river. But what we did, we planted trees to screen that big building out because it's as ugly as anything. We narrowed that street down. We removed that car park. That was a big challenge, but we did it. We had a mayor at the time who had the courage to do that sort of thing, remove the car parking, turn it back over to the people, and today that is an extremely popular park. It gets used for music events of an evening. That's the Canberra Symphony Orchestra performing there. It has a playground. The shade, we have to, in Australia, we put artificial shade over our playgrounds until the trees grow. But it's there. Wet play, that's something extremely popular in Australia because it's so damn hot in Australia. It's going to be very popular here in Turkey, wet play. And we tried little things like solar-powered barbecues, and they're extremely popular as well. But that was a simple reclaiming of that car park back to parkland. Similar situation, one street over from the last street you saw. This is in the centre of the city of Queanbeyan in Canberra, or near Canberra, Australia. It was 4 lanes of traffic, plus parking, plus turning lanes. It was the barrier down the middle of the street was to stop pedestrians from walking across the road. It was truly insane. It was so bad that the shops turned their back on it and faced the car park out the other side. And the mayor said, the brief I was given was turn this into a pedestrian-friendly green zone. Now, I couldn't close the road, but I got rid of 2 lanes of traffic. I managed to keep the car park. I managed to get rid of the barrier down the middle. And we don't actually have curb and gutter there. What we have is OCIs. It's a single gradient right across the road from shop front to shop front. So you can walk anywhere, you can push a pram anywhere, you can wheel your wheelchair anywhere in that street. And today it is extremely popular alfresco dining. Everybody's turned their face back onto the street, and it's probably the heart of the city now. Simple little park, Ray Morton Park, just a green grass paddock with some trees around the outside. If you look at the aerial photograph, there's not much there, not much to invite you. Down the bottom corner is a little art gallery, and that's all that people would go there for. The brief we were given on this one was make this to a sensory garden for children to go and experience all the different factories and experiences. So we put in sensory gardens, we put in art, we put a cafe there, which is so popular I can't get into it now. And it is, again, simple, small, not expensive. The cafe is only 2 shipping containers, so we can pick it up and take it away in times of flood. But that is one of the most popular parks in the city because of that simple turning it back into the community's space. Oop, did I go too far? No. On a greater scale, this is not my project, but I always like to show it because I never believed I'd see this happen in Australia. The photo on the left is the international shipping terminal in Sydney, just round behind the harbour bridge. And for years, that was a no-go zone. It's Crown land, it belongs to the government. And it was leased to the international shipping freight terminal. The government decided we wanted all those freighters out of the centre of Sydney, move them down the coast to a different port where the steelworks was closing up, and they needed some industry. So all the freight comes out of Illawarra now, out of our Port Kembla. And what surprised me and surprised most landscape people in Australia is they didn't turn that into a high-rise building, which would have been worth millions and millions of dollars. They turned it into a park. They removed the concrete. They went back to the original foreshore. They got old paintings from the 1700s when it first colonised Australia, and they replicated and put that back. And that is probably, to me, one of the most amazing parks I have ever seen happen in Australia. And it's something worth visiting. Just around the corner is the Harbour Bridge. So if you know where the Opera House is in Sydney, then the Harbour Bridge, this is just behind it. It's well worth a walk, and you can now walk the entire foreshore from the Harbour Bridge or from the Opera House all the way down to Darling Harbour, and absolutely worth experiencing if you're in Sydney. So parks, remember that parks, green spaces, they're for everybody. They're not just for the councils, they're not just for the businesses, they're for everybody, whether it be entertainment, whether it be exercise, whether it be young, old, whether you're holding a markets on the weekend. That's what our parks should be for. They're community spaces, and we should use them as community spaces. Now, this is my last slide, and I always put this up as my challenge to you as individuals. So we've been talking about building better parks, green spaces, to get the community into the park. But you as professionals, you also need to take time out. In Australia, we have a program, it has gone international. It's called Nature Pact. It's every September. You can go online to the People and Parks Foundation, which is based in Melbourne, and you can register as a participant, same way as all these other campaigns that run around the world. And you can go, and your challenge is to go and spend 20 to 30 minutes in a green space every day for the month of September. So my challenge to you is that it doesn't matter what month of the year it is, whatever country you live in, whatever month you choose, for the whole month, go and spend 30 minutes a day in a green space. Whether that's sit under a tree and eat your lunch while you're at work, go for a walk in the park, do whatever it is. Go by the waterfront, green or blue space, doesn't matter. Take the time, and at the end of the month, tell me if it hasn't made you feel much better as a person. And that's what you're trying to give to the community. Give them green, better cities. I'm very lucky that bush that I'm in there is on my own property, so I just have to walk out the back door and go wander through the bush, and I spend my time up there every day, and my wife goes out for her walks there every day. So that's it, and thank you very much.